Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBall. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests, paid contests coming to a state near you. They're slashing lines and giving boosts out all day long. Check it out. It's a fun platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We got another UFC Vegas event this upcoming week before a week hiatus. So check me out later in the week. Actually, that'll come out before then, so hope you enjoyed it. With me today,
Gates referee Samuel Burgos to stop this contest with an official time of 34 seconds of the opening round. Your winner by way of technical knockout. The Red Queen returns, Jamie Driver.
She is a 2-4 professional MMA fighter, 3-1 in the BYB Bareknuckle platform. Give it up for Jamie, the Red Queen Driver. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. How's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. It's going really great. How are you?
I'm doing good. And you know what's fun is watching highlights from some of your fights in BYB. And you got the fight coming up on June 14th at BYB 27, Brawl in Duval, going down in Jacksonville. And it's a rematch with Sonya Dreiling. Sonya Dreiling, who is, I believe, her nickname is like Red something. It doesn't say it on Tapology, but her nickname is Red something. So it's a rematch. A rematch of the Reds. How are you feeling going into this rematch with Sonya in June?
I feel great. Very confident. You know, our first matchup fight, I wasn't in good shape. I was actually really out of shape. I had a lot of personal stuff going on. So going into that fight, you know, I wasn't in the best mindset as well. So I'm actually excited for the rematch because I'll be making weight this time, better mindset, way better camp. So she's going to learn her lesson the second time around.
And, it seemed like in that fight, it makes sense now that you say that, about how that your preparation for that fight happened, because in that fight, it was a split decision win. And it seemed like you did have to do a lot of fighting off of your back foot in that one, but still came out the split decision win. So, that's where that reach comes in handy.
No, absolutely. I definitely, going into the third, fourth, and fifth round, I kind of settled in and I got more comfortable. But as you saw, that fight was a very slow pace, which really isn't the type of pace I like to fight, especially going backwards. I mean, but as you can tell, I can fight going backwards and I can fight going forwards too.
And so then I want to get to the time in between that first fight and this upcoming one a little bit here in a minute. But to start off with MMA, you were 2-2 as an amateur with 2 fights in Cage Fury, which is a very reputable organization. 2 wins in Cage Fury. And your last loss as an amateur in MMA was by split decision at Gladiators of the Cage. You start off your pro MMA career with 3 straight losses. One of them was to future Bellator featherweight Jesse Mile back at Reality Fighting. It's crazy to see where people end up, when they're starting off careers. You look back at someone that you fought in 2016. It's like, oh, they're in Bellator or PFL now. So after that losing streak to start your professional career, you ended up then going, 2-1 in your next 3 fights. So how did you assess what the problems were when you started your pro MMA career? And then how did you turn that around over the next 3 fights after that?
What it was is I really didn't take training as serious as I started to later into my career. I'm a naturally gifted, talented athlete. But obviously, as MMA, you need to train in all, facets of the sport. And I really wasn't giving it my all. And I honestly, if I'm being honest, I really wasn't confident in myself as I should have been. My mind just wasn't as strong as it is now. And I actually made the move to Florida 4 years ago, and that's when I started to start winning fights. Well, actually, no, I take that back. I did win a couple fights when I was still living in New Jersey. But the move from New Jersey to Florida was what really helped change and traject, obviously, my career going from MMA to bare knuckle. And as you see, I've been pretty much winning, almost everything except for one fight. I just work diligently with coaches, and I work diligently on myself and bettering my mindset and my focus going into fight camps.
In making that move from New Jersey to Florida, did you notice any differences between like the fan bases of the shows that you were fighting at?
The fan bases, the problem is I never fought in New Jersey once. So I guess so I've never fought in New Jersey. I only fought outside of New Jersey in PA. That was the closest to home I ever fought. And then down in Florida, I guess the first time I fought was this year, actually. This January was the first time I fought in Florida. I definitely have more fans personally back up home. But fan wise, I mean, people come out for the fights, down here and up in the north, which is pretty cool.
And so then it was in 2019 November. That was so far your last fight in MMA. You had two fights that ended up getting canceled. One was in 2020, one was in 2022. Obviously, that giant pandemic also, I know, brought stuff to a screeching halt at a lot of regional shows. How was it that you ended up coming into the opportunity of bare knuckle boxing? I've heard answers all over the board from people. Some people, it's like, they never even thought about it until they just saw an opportunity coming up and took it. Some people, it's almost like they were preparing to be bare knuckle fighters the whole time that they were training.
Yeah, I never came into knowing about bare knuckle until I think the year I fought, like a year before that. Because when the pandemic hit, the pandemic didn't play any part of my career. It was actually, I suffered a crazy injury. And I actually suffered some pretty serious health issues right like a month or two before the pandemic hit. So I was actually in and out of the hospital for like months, for like almost like a year and a half. So fighting wasn't even on like a blip of like, but that wasn't even like a thought. So it was actually kind of, yeah, I mean, I ended up fighting, I think it took me like a year and a half, almost 2 years, because I was medically suspended by a commission and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, BKFC was the first promotion to offer me a bare knuckle fight. And then I ended up catching a couple injuries going into fight camp. So fights kind of just kept falling through. The weight was also an issue. BKFC doesn't have my weight class. I usually fight at 45, 47. So that kind of became difficult. So I was then offered another fight, and that was through BYB. They had, bigger girls. And I just was like, you know what? Why not give it a try? I've fought in MMA before. I've done one kickboxing fight. I've done a Muay Thai fight. I went over to Russia. I did Sambo. So to me, it was just like one more sport to compete in. And yeah, I haven't looked back since the first fight though.
And I love that about BYB. I love that they have that weight class because, especially after the retirement of Amanda Nunes, there was like this widespread thing throughout MMA and combat sports that people were talking about getting rid of the featherweight division, and PFL really stood out for having the women's lightweight division for so long. If you've listened to the show before, I'm a huge fan of both the women's atomweight and the women's featherweight divisions across the board. I'm interested in who is the best in the world at every weight class. If they had a women's 185-pound weight class, I'd be very interested to see who's wearing a championship belt for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see that more women are getting into all the combat sports. Obviously being a woman, I fully support it. Because when I first started in MMA, I was the only girl on the mats with a bunch of grown men. So it's amazing to see the growth of women in combat sports. But yeah, I wish they did allow a little bit more weight classes. I mean, obviously we hear about the 155ers. I understand it's still pretty meek. It's still, women's combat sports is still growing. But I think they should allow heavier weight classes. I mean, I know they do one-off fights here and there for some girls that are 160, 165, but it'd be cool if they got to open up more bigger weight classes for us.
And I mean, now I'm going a little bit off topic, but I've always wondered, like, especially out in Japan, I can't believe
Mm.
that super heavyweight doesn't have like it's just considered to be a dead thing. But it's like you're telling me there's no one in the world that's 300 pounds that would be watchable to fight. Like, there's so many good crazy fights that they've done in the past, with Butterbean and guys like that.
Hmm.
And it's like I know that there's got to be somebody who weighs 300 pounds across the ring that it would be fun to watch fight. There's got to be.
There's got to be somebody out there. There's always someone out there. We just haven't found them yet.
So what has like been the biggest transition to bare knuckle boxing? Like because you are someone that really utilizes the overhook well, like in the clinch in BYB, and you get off really hard shots to the side of people's head when you're up in that clinch. And it's there's that side of your style. There's also the style that like has like excellent footwork and has a good reach that you use well. So what was the transition process like from MMA to bare knuckle?
Transition wise, it wasn't super difficult. It was different in the fact that I was so focused on trying to blend as a martial artist, the striking with the grappling and the wrestling. The one thing I will say that made it easy transition wise was wrestling. Because I have that clinch game. A lot of the girls, they just box, so they don't have a clinch game. So that was pretty easy for me to incorporate into it. But I did have to work pretty hard on like you just mentioned, my footwork, which thank you. I worked very hard on that, and I'm still working very hard on it. It's boxing footwork is very different than MMA footwork, especially when you also can have the clinch in, can add the clinch in there. So I just focused a lot more on perfecting my boxing techniques, and mixing that up with my wrestling.
Do you think you ever have any plans to go back to MMA? I know that some people kind of play it by ear, and that's the thing about BYB is because now like there are eyes on your fights. Like it's another thing to where like MMA, even if you're winning, it can be slow to come up and make a name for yourself. But BYB, it's a whole different group of people that are being seen by people who have all these streaming services. So is that something that you have in the back of your mind, or is MMA something that you've kind of put in the rearview mirror?
At this moment in time, I've honestly put it in the rearview mirror. I'm very focused on continuing to fight bare knuckle. I did just re-sign with BYB, and I look to be the 147-pound champion one day. Honestly, going forward in the future, I'd like to do glove boxing. That's more where my passion and my heart is now.
What's it like being under the BYB banner? I've heard, almost I would say pretty much exclusively good things about, working with BYB and how the fighters feel about, being a part of it.
Honestly, they are the best promotion I've ever fought for. And I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up anyone's ass. I don't need to do that shit. They really, I mean, from the jump from day one to now, I mean, if there ever was an issue, if I needed to talk to someone or I needed help or whatever it was, they always made sure I was taken care of, and even they take care of my family. When my dad comes to all my fights, like he's always taken care of. And it's a pretty big close knit family, and it's really cool to see, and it's really awesome to be a part of the promotion and the growth of it too.
It's got to be, especially for what it's like for so many people in the regional MMA scene and what, getting a worthwhile fight in boxing can be like. It's got to be so much easier to prepare for, a big fight when you also don't have, God, I hate the people that I'm working with right now, like hanging over your head.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, or working with people that make you feel uncomfortable or whatever the case is. I mean, that's not the case at all with them. I mean, I know that it's always a good time, from fight week coming in, everything's great. So I love it there. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't go to any other bare knuckle promotion ever.
And I've been asking this from everybody that I've talked to at BYB, because everybody, it seems like, at some point made the transition to BYB after, doing something else beforehand, whatever it was. Um, this is a sport where your following matters, and the amount of people that know your name and want to watch you fight, it really matters for the opportunities that you have. And so have you found that that has, increased since you made the transition to bare knuckle? And is that something that you've noticed is, opening up maybe some more opportunities than before?
A little bit. For me personally, it hasn't grown tremendously. Like I'm not getting like a thousand, like new fans and followers. Not yet. I feel like I'm still just breaking through and breaking that barrier. I think, people are still getting to know who I am and see who I am. So, um, yeah, we're working on it.
Well, that's the thing. In this sport, you just do something, super crazy or impressive, and it will make the rounds. Or and you've been in, already a handful of big fights for BYB that have had. Yeah, and that takes me kind of to the next point. So May 13th of last year is when you had the title fight against Josette Cotton. It was a loss by
Mhm.
unanimous decision. It was I forget the term that they have for that belt. I know it has the word police in it.
Oh,
But
the Police Gazette belt.
yes.
Yeah, because we were both supposed to fight at 147 for that belt, but we both didn't make weight. So we only fought for the Police Gazette belt that night.
And can you explain what the difference is, between those distinctions for BYB?
With the belts,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, I really don't know. I just know there's the BYB belt and then there's the Police Gazette belt. What the Police Gazette belt is, I honestly, this sounds awful, but I have no friggin' idea.
Thank God, I am relieved because I didn't know either. That's why I was asking. I see Police Gazette belt all the time, and I'm like, wait, so like, it's not the BYB belt. It's a different thing because on Tapology it just calls them BYB Championship fights.
Mm,
Time I saw I didn't know if I was at first. I was like, is that the BYB belt? Seems weird to call it the Police Gazette belt if it was the BYB belt, but that was the fight against Josette Cotton. That was the scene. It was your first loss under the BYB banner and in bare knuckle boxing. What do, what do you think the issues were in the Josette Cotton fight? Where did anything catch you by surprise, or just what did you feel about that fight now that you're looking back at it?
Nothing that she did call me by surprise. It really was just it was just me. I was having health issues again, and I was just kind of trying to push through camp. I definitely wasn't. I wasn't feeling. I was physically off, and I was mentally off. I was just trying to just get through the fight. Um, but looking back, I mean, I analyzed the fight. I watched it multiple times. I was too tall. I was trying to box her. I was just trying to box, and I was forgetting about the other aspect of clinching. And anytime I did clinch with her, I won in the clinch, but we didn't really clinch that much. But yeah, that was, of course, you never want to lose, but I was grateful I lost because it opened up. I kind of was starting to just trying to be a boxer, but this is bare knuckle boxing. It's a totally different sport. Um, so yeah.
And and I don't know, watching her, like she does have like a straight, just the way she holds her arms is kind of strange. Like I remember that like catching my eye, and like anytime anything like that catches your eye when you're watching someone fight, it's like that's got to be weird. Then like usually I don't notice how people hold their arms like too strongly, and there's just something just like a little wonky kind of about the way she fights, and it seemed like at times during that fight that both of you, were kind of like, just like a half a second late to what you wanted to do or whatever it was. It seemed like that was for both. And so there were times where you were boxing and she was kind of squaring up, and it was like it feels like there's just a little bit of sync missing. If just one thing, 1 inch off on either one of your steps, and it could have changed the fight in both directions.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. I was a half a second, a mile behind. Honestly, it's like my brain and my body were just completely disconnected that night. You know what I mean? I was just fighting on, really out that night. I was fighting out of survival and instinct, which they weren't that good that night.
And then, now after that, you have a fight, you got a win under your belt for the year 2024 with a lot of time to go. You bounce back with a first round knockout over Adriana Vukovic back at BYB 23, Brawl in the Pines 2. It's got to feel good to bounce back, after the Josette Cotton fight and get a first round knockout in the fashion that you did.
It felt amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like after a loss, it's always tough and you kind of try to reevaluate yourself. And then, I was doubting myself and doubting if I was like, damn, maybe I'm really not that good, So it was nice to come in and win in that fashion and just kind of remind myself, like, yeah, I'm that bitch.
And that was a fight where your greatest strengths were really highlighted. Like sometimes when people have the reach that you do, and you've got like a problematic length for people at that weight class, but some people struggle to use that and transition into the close range game, and you did it flawlessly against Adriana Vukovic. You got in really in tight, and those punches that you were landing to the side of her head in that clinch were just you could tell that it was not going to make it much further than the first round very early on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny because Adriana, she's an MMA fighter, so I kind of had an idea of how she was going to fight. But she had been off for like a year and a half, and she never fought bare knuckle before. So I was like, it can either go one of two ways. She's going to come out wild swinging, or she's going to sit back and wait. And I was like, but I don't really give a shit. I'm just going to step on the gas. So that's pretty much what I did. But as soon as I stepped on the gas, the first thing, she wanted to do was clinch. So that was like, that's the only place she's going to want and need to be to beat me. So I just made the proper adjustment, and that was all she wrote in 34 seconds.
And you gotta think that this upcoming fight against Sonya Dreiling, now that you're coming off another knockout win, Sonya Dreiling being the win that you got that led to the title shot, you got to think that there's got to be very real championship implications for this one, because she's coming off of two traditional boxing matches. She's actually fought like 6 times since you guys fought in a mixture of boxing and bare knuckle. So it's an interesting place that she's coming in from. But her last 2 bare knuckle fights were wins. So you got to think that there are championship implications attached to this upcoming fight.
I would assume so. I definitely think the winner of her and I will be fighting for a belt next. At least that's what I would like. And it's going to be me.
Jamie, this has been a very fun conversation. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Sorry that it's you had to go outside for the Wi-Fi to work and it's hot, but
it's okay. You're helping me cut weight right now. I love it. It's good.
that's Florida weight cutting.
Yes.
Folks, Jamie Driver's fighting on June 14th. Jamie, the Red Queen Driver, fighting on June 14th in the Red Rematch. That is what I'm coining it. BYB, feel free to steal that if you want to. But Jamie, if there's anything else that you want to say, shout out, social media handles, anything like that, the floor is yours.
I just want to first and foremost thank God for giving me another opportunity to live out my dreams. The promotion, BYB, my coaches, Derek Santos, Brian Garber, Mola Wall, everybody, all my training partners, my friends, my family, all my sponsors. Thank you for the continued support. My fans, I love you guys. I wouldn't keep doing this and be living out my dreams if it wasn't for all your love and support. And Sonya, I hope you're motherfucking ready for June 14th, because I know I am.
Yes. Oh, now I'm ready. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make all my picks and say everything about the whole world of combat sports, regional MMA promotions, the UFC, PFL, Bellator. On Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Peace.